now as if Chelsea couldn't get any stronger. They broke a club record deal to sign Alyssa Thompson from Angel City. I'm delighted to say that my friend, I was just with Becki out in San Diego. She's coached Alyssa for 3 or 4 years. She knows her like the back of her hand. Becki, first and foremost, before we come on to Alyssa, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, coming to the end of the season, so just going through the craziness. This league is always fun at the end of the year with the league table and how close every game is. So yeah, just continuing to grow every game and trying to get ourselves over the line and into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, those are the people that listen to my show religiously. They'll know I've had you on a couple of times and you were formerly the Angel City coach. So now you are the San Diego Wave assistant coach. I mean, you weren't at the game for long, which makes me so happy because we need more people like Becki Tweed in the game. And I had to get you on, Bex. I know we were together the other day and, we met up after the game. We had a chat and I love our chats. But like, you are somebody that's coached Alyssa for a long, long time. Like, talk to us, talk to my audience, for those that are not familiar with her game like you are. Tell them a little bit about what she is like as a player and a person.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an incredibly exciting player for the WSL. I think wherever she goes, she gets a crowd on their feet. She's the player that when she gets the ball, she just excites the fans. And I think, for those Chelsea fans out there, you're going to really enjoy what she can bring to any game. She obviously has an incredible change of pace and low center of gravity. I think if you she can make something from nothing. I think for me and just working with her behind the scenes, I also think the maturity that she's gained over the last couple of years has been really incredible to watch. I will say she is the definition of a true pro, and this is a 20-year-old that we're talking about. So I think it's so exciting for the WSL and for Chelsea. I think this is an incredible person and an incredible player that has come over to England now to show her trade and to kind of put herself on the world stage. And I think she's only just getting started. So I think, as much as a loss it is for us over here in the NWSL, I think it's huge for global women's football. And I'm excited to see what she can do over there. But like I said, I think she's only just getting started. I think she's a world-class talent, with an incredible personality and attitude that's only going to continue to push her further.
Yeah, I mean, I've met with Alyssa a few times when I used to come to your former team's training ground and we'd have a chat. And I said to her, like, it was so refreshing to hear a young player be humble. She was like, I wasn't good enough to be picked for the Olympics. I went away, I worked hard. Like, can you just talk about that journey she was on? Because you were part of that journey. You were there, you were a manager, you were a head coach when she didn't get picked, when everyone was saying she should have been picked. And it's a lot for a young player to take on, isn't it? That responsibility.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot, and I think, as a pro, you go through so many ups and downs, and actually your reaction to those moments, I think, make or break you at times. And I think, those moments for Alyssa, as hard as they were at the time with the Olympics and even coming off the back of a World Cup and at such a young age, the maturity that she showed, and I think the guidance that she saw out was incredible to watch her growth. And those moments are hard for a young player. And for a young player to come away with their head on their shoulders and say, you know what, I have to be better is a big responsibility. And I think, she has a process and she has a development plan and she has an identity and a journey that she's just trusting. And I think that can become really hard and it can become really impatient with the pressure that you get from the external and sometimes the internal. And I think, what is so special about Alyssa is how well-rounded she is. She is very mature, but she also has that fun side of her where you can see when she enjoys the game and she still has that love and that passion. And I think, ultimately for me, she just has that well-rounded, like, fun and enjoyment, but also head down and drive. And she pulled herself out of some really like challenging moments, but I think that will just prepare her so well for the future because we all know that it isn't a straight line for her moving forward. There's going to be some really highs for her, and I have no doubt she goes on to achieve some really top things in her game. But she knows she's going to go through some downsides too. That's sports in general, and I think she's prepared herself really well for everything that she's going to come across.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a foregone conclusion she'll get into the team, as crazy as it sounds, as much as they've broken the record. I thought it was quite interesting because on one hand, they lost to Lissa, and I saw someone in the crowd saying, we don't like baked beans. It really made me laugh at BMO because it was like talking about the weather in England, and it really made me laugh. Then the next day, they announced Giselle Thompson, her sister's 4-year deal. So it was interesting because those who are not familiar, Giselle and Alyssa played on the same team with Angel City. You know, their family are there. So for me personally, I think this is a big step for Alyssa. As much as I'm gutted that she's leaving this league, I still work in the WSL, so I'm happy for Chelsea. But like, I think it's a step out of her comfort zone and one that I think, she'll flourish in. I have no doubt. Something else I want to talk to you about, Bex, like the transfer record fees being broken left, right, and centre. We've seen Naomi Gurma, Olivia Smith, Alyssa Thompson now. Giaro's gone to London City Lionesses. Like, what do you think this means for the women's game? Like, we've just seen Jaden Shaw as well go this week for a record to Gotham. I know you're coming up against her in that game for the Wave as well on Friday night. Like, what do you think about the trajectory of the women's game at this moment in time? It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's refreshing to see. I think those numbers are something that you would only have dreamed of a couple of months ago, and I think actually the growth of it has been so rapid. And it's going to be one of those things, right? When it gets broken, it's just going to get broken again and again and again. And I think, for all the years that, women and around the world have been fighting for this equity and this opportunity, it's now starting to exist. And I still think it has a long way to go in some senses, but I think, everybody that's left the game in a better place than they found it, and all the opportunity for the younger players and again for this sport and for women's sports to be taken now very seriously with good competition, good crowds, high level, and deserving salaries and money and transfer fees is really good to be a part of. And I think it's just going to continue to rocket, and I think it's fun, and there's so much more growth still to go for sure.
And now we've spoken about everybody else, I want to talk about you. Now with the San Diego Wave, you're back as an assistant. That's how you kind of started out. What has that transition been like for you? Like, because I saw you the other day and you loved being a head coach, but I just felt like you had this aura around you. Like, I always say, I've never not got along with my assistant coach because they're not the ones that you always think are making the decisions. They put their arm around you. So, like, you just seem to be really flourishing in that role under Jonas Eidevall.
Yeah, I think, it's so important to go through multiple experiences. And I think going through the experience of being a head coach really allowed me to reflect and to grow and to figure out a little bit about myself. Like, where are my strengths and where are the spaces that I need to improve? And I think through all of it, you kind of figure out who you are as a person. And I know that, one of the biggest things for me is like I really value people, and I really value the opportunity to guide and to teach and to coach people. And ultimately, yes, we work in a sport and we work in a game, but we work in a people business where, you have to be able to connect. So I think, working with another group of players, I think that's always exciting. You get to build new relationships, and you get to meet more people and help more people flourish in their careers. And I think for me, just being able to reflect on who I am as a coach and who I am as a person and being able to bring that to a new environment has been really enjoyable and exciting. I really enjoy the brand of football that we play here. I really enjoy, what is to come in the growth of this group and this team. But I think for me, putting myself from assistant to head coach back to assistant, just the learning and the growth I've been able to have, but now been able to use that to understand a little bit more of Jonas's path and where he's coming from in his decision making, because it is so different and you don't really know until you've done it and you can see the other side of how challenging it is.
Yeah, and I think like what you're doing at the San Diego Wave, like you got off an incredible start of the season. You went into last Friday night's game in third, and there's been a lot of trials and tribulations off the field to play with San Diego. And I said to Jonas the other day, I said, what you brought to this club is stability. Brought
Mhm.
in people like yourself, Anya Mittag, Ben Young. He was our high performance coach at England as well. So like, I feel like they're putting down the foundations. Like, how important is that for a team to have that type of stability on the coaching staff?
Yeah, and I think experience from different leagues and different cultures and different spaces is really important as well. And I think, again, like we work in the people industry and the people first mentality is so important, and the ability to connect with people and bring the best out of them. I think then you can start to bring together your experiences, and you have somebody like Anya who is obviously a world-class player that can come in and bring her experience, and who better to learn from as a young forward or a young player that is up and coming. And yeah, experiences from Ben and from others that have been in major tournaments with players like yourself. And I think, the evolution of the women's game and staying relevant, which means you need to challenge each other and challenge yourself and continue to grow with the speed of the game. And I think that can become the challenge, right? The game is growing so quickly and the players are growing and the resources are growing, but are the coaches and the staff growing with it? Because ultimately you're only going to be as good as your environment. And I think those things are really important when, you're looking at what club environment you want to be in.
I think one of my things that I find, what I've seen of late and in the last couple of years, is I think a lot of coaches are being thrown in, even in England, they're getting their coaching licenses and they're getting head coaching job, whereas actually, and they're not building a team around them and just kind of been left hanging. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Left out to dry.
Yeah.
And that's what I see. It happens in England and I think it happens all over the world. So like, what is Jonas like? Because I'll tell you what, he's really turned me around in the sense that I wasn't a massive fan of Jonas's when he was at Arsenal. Like I felt like not as a person, just his
Hmm.
style and his fit philosophy of the way he plays. I said to him the other day, I said, "You are fantastic. I could listen to him talk about football and break down the game all day long." And I gave him a compliment, and it was almost like he didn't know how to receive it, because he's like, because what he's done for this San Diego Wave team in a short space of time is quite remarkable from where
Hmm.
they've come from to now, and the style of players. Cascarino, Kenza Dali, like 34 years old, having the best football she's ever played, really. And she's been
Hmm.
incredible, one of the best players in the league. But like, I see a different Jonas at the San Diego Wave. Like,
Hmm.
what's he like to work with, and what do you see?
Yeah, I think for me, again, I keep talking about people, but he really cares about people. And I think, when you know somebody is in your corner and they really care about you, then you feel like you can be yourself and that allows you to perform better. I think that's a huge piece for me. I also think bringing experience from and anybody that can self-reflect and look at what growth you can have in a new environment is only going to make people around them better and themselves better. So I think, what you see is a huge amount of self-reflection and growth and a huge amount of experience that maybe, and I can speak from experience for myself too, like you've done something a certain type of way and you like that way and you keep it. And then on the flip side, you've done something a certain type of way and you don't like it and you have the opportunity to change that and grow from it. And I think again recognizing what group you have in front of you and what do they need. I think some of the big things and learnings I've taken is like, there's give and take in teams. It can't be like a one-way street. It has to be a little bit of both ways. And again, I think if you can bring that value and it is both ways and it is really team effort from players to staff to leadership, then you feel part of something that's much bigger than yourself. And you know that is what creates that competitive vibe and that successful team. And I think that's what he's been able to bring to this team is that experience, that, new environment, that care and that trust. And those things are really, really important when you spend so much time together and you really rely on each other in the good and the bad.
And just finally, the familiarity of people watching the NWSL and the playoffs is so different to England, isn't it? Sometimes it's a difficult transition because as a coach, like, how do you approach? You've got like 7, 8 games to go. You're in a really
Mm.
good spot, but like in the NWSL, I think what makes it the best, genuinely, is because there's like 6 points that separate between eighth and third. So like as a coach, that I know it's a cliche, take each game as it comes, one day at a
Yeah.
time. But like, how do you not let the highs get too high and the lows get too lows as a coach?
Yeah, and I think that's the skill of it. I think there is that emotion that's tied to results often, and I think this league, the parity is so real that you can't go into any game other than to think, you need to play well to win the game. And I think that's the difference in this league. If even if you play well, you still might lose the game. And I think sometimes in leagues in Europe, you can get away with that, knowing that, you didn't play your best, but you can still win 1 or 2-0 or 2-1. This league, you don't get to do that. And I think the process, as again cliche as it sounds, the process is just as important as the result. And sometimes you get the luck and sometimes you don't. But I genuinely believe in this league to win, you have to play well. And we talk about it a lot actually is how do you minimize mistakes to give yourself the best opportunity to win games? And I think sometimes that's the difference. In Europe, I feel like there's a lot more control in a game. And if a team is dominant, they tend to control the game. This game in this league, it can be different periods in 10 minutes. It can be different periods in a first half and a second half. And yes, it's exciting. And I still think nobody's really mastered how to control a 90-minute game in this league. I think that's something that maybe is the evolution of the NWSL. But the parity is so close and what this league brings is excitement. And you can't take the highs and the lows, and the turnaround is so quick. So it really, for me, is a process, and it really is like remaining true to your identity whilst trying to grind out results. And when you talk to players in this league, they often say the second half of the year is the grind time. It's like where you need to find your results, where maybe things don't go as you planned and you play some unbelievable football in the first half of the year. But the second half of me is about the mentality and the grit and the how do you pull out a 1-0 or get yourself a point on the road somewhere really challenging. Um, and it's a little bit more, maybe not low risk, but you know that you need to pick up points. And honestly, the best thing to do is to not look at the table. The best thing to do is to take your team and yourself and kind of just make sure every game you pick up points to know that you're going to get across the line.
Yeah, I mean, just to put into perspective, Utah Royals a couple of weeks ago beat Portland. Utah were bottom of the table at the time. Portland hadn't lost at home in 10 games, and they went to Portland, which is one of the most incredible atmospheres to go to, and they got a
Mm.
result back. So, like, I hope
Yeah,
that one day the WSL will have that type of parity, because I love the WSL. We've got some fantastic players in it, but I just don't think you get the bottom. Like last year, Palace got beat, 7-8-0 by Chelsea in the first game of the season.
yeah.
Like, I just don't think that happens. It happens in the leagues, but not like that. Anyway, Bex,
No,
actually our time has come to an end, but thank you so much for joining me. Good luck for the rest of the season, and I'll speak to you soon.
thank you.